right, guys, welcome back to another episode of the Rust Belt Outdoors. On today's episode, I sat down with Kaitlyn Carlson. She's the Education and Outreach Director at the French Creek Conservancy. The French Creek Valley Conservancy, which is located here in northwestern Pennsylvania and in part of New York. She goes over that in a podcast. This 501c3 nonprofit is an absolutely phenomenal organization. They do a ton of great work for the local area as well as the stream itself, and they have tons of outreach programs, tons of education programs. If you don't know who they are, haven't heard of them, please go check them out. They have a Facebook page, they're on Instagram, they have a website. Please, please, please check them out. Hope you guys enjoy.
Yep, I'm Kaitlyn Carlson. I'm the Education Outreach Coordinator at French Creek Valley Conservancy here in Meadville, but we serve the entire watershed, the French Creek watershed.
And that starts up in New York, right?
Yes, so French Creek starts up in Chautauqua County, New York, and it flows 117 miles, so it's actually pretty long, longer than I think most people realize, through Chautauqua County, New York, through Erie County, Pennsylvania, and then through. I'll start that section over if that's okay.
That's fine.
Okay, sorry. Didn't realize that it
Yeah,
had
no,
to be
you're
on
good.
there.
Yep.
All right. So the French Creek watershed starts up in Chautauqua County, New York. Then it flows 117 miles through Erie County, Pennsylvania, into Crawford County, Pennsylvania. It touches the very corner of Mercer County for just a second, and then goes into Venango County, where it meets up with the Allegheny River.
Right. And then you get the Allegheny, turns into the Ohio, and eventually down to the Gulf, to the Mississippi.
Yeah. So when we talk about watershed scale impacts, so we're talking about what happens in our watershed, but then we have a lot of neighbors that live downriver of us. So a lot of what we do, even the small decisions, have big impacts on the people downstream of us. So one of our goals is to improve the water quality here so that we're also helping our neighbors downstream.
Right. And French Creek is considered one of the cleanest waterways in the country, right?
Yes, it's one of the cleanest, one of the most biologically diverse on this side of the Mississippi. And so it is something that people come from a long ways to fish around in all of our lakes and tributaries, and then French Creek itself. And then people come from all over to do scientific study too, because there is so many different species in French Creek that people come from all over to study species that sometimes are only found in the upper Allegheny watershed, which includes French Creek, and the entire world. So it's cool that we have some species that no other place really has.
What species are those?
So one of them is a species of darter, and I'd have to look at it because fish are not my forte. But one of the species of darters, and maybe even more than one, but they are only found in the upper part of the Allegheny watershed. And there are some researchers at Allegheny that have spent a lot more time doing this kind of work, and they've done species research with some of these fish, and have found them. And it's just really cool to know that our area is home to some species that you really cannot find anywhere else in the world. You think of those species like in the Amazon, that there's only a couple there. Well, there's only a couple here, and they're right in French Creek.
And we have the freshwater clam in French Creek, which is almost extinct elsewhere, right?
Yeah. So what species was that again?
The freshwater clams?
Freshwater clams, yes. Yeah. So the freshwater mussels or clams, it's really interchangeable, and people get stuck on one or the other.
Oh, I didn't know that. I thought they were completely different.
It could be the same or different. So freshwater mussels, we have 27 different species of freshwater mussels in French Creek. North America has the most freshwater mussels comparative to other continents, with just under 300, so in the 290s. But there are a lot in the world. In the mussel family, there's quite a few. But if you look at other spaces, I mean, we have a lot in a small space. So I said French Creek was 117 miles. The watershed is around 1,200 square miles. All of Europe only has 16 species of freshwater mussels.
We have 27.
So
that's awesome.
We have 11 more species than all of Europe, which is really impressive.
That definitely is. Yeah. I know, like you were saying about people coming from all over the place to experience the waterway. We do a lot of kayaking on the creek, and every time we're out there, we pass everybody, and you see all the houses that are backed up to the waterway, and you can see they all have their kayaks down at the bottom, or a
Mhm.
canoe, or a dock, or whatever. And it's definitely something you see all the signs, like French Creek, a community treasure all over the place. And it really is, honestly. You know, the first time I saw it, I was like, oh, that's kind of cheesy. And then I really started experiencing the waterway, and it's like, no, honestly, this is. And people take really good care of it. So, like, I grew up on Oil Creek in Oil City. I was just outside of the state park there, and that's a clean waterway, but nowhere near comparable to what French Creek is. And the people that lived around it didn't treat it the way that the people seem to treat French Creek. And I think it's just
Mhm.
amazing that we've come that far, and we have this waterway that is this clean, and we're keeping it that way.
Yeah.
It's absolutely amazing to me.
Yeah, I think that the people here really do take ownership of this being a community treasure. And I mean, you see the signs and
Hmm.
we say it all the time, but people in the community do say it a lot.
Yeah.
And at FCBC, we're actually the designated managers for the water trail, the French Creek Water Trail.
Okay.
So we are always trying to get people out kayaking and canoeing, even stand-up paddle boarding.
Absolutely.
And we do have maps on our website that show the water trail, and we have a couple launches that FCBC owns along the water
Yeah.
trail. But yeah, it's really cool to see people get outside and on the water. And again, people come from all over to kayak in
Absolutely.
French Creek. So
Yeah. What is the water trail exactly?
yeah, so just like with our hiking trails,
Mhm.
there are also water trails. And in Pennsylvania, we have a water trail system. And there is an Allegheny or a mid Allegheny water trail, upper Allegheny, lower Allegheny, and then there's French Creek, and that's kind of in our area of
Okay.
Pennsylvania, Northwest PA. But French Creek Water Trail starts at the Union City Dam, and then it flows all the way to where the French Creek River flows into the Allegheny River.
Okay.
So it's a pretty extensive water trail. It's over 70 miles in length. And we have a lot of different launches that a couple different agencies in the watershed own. Fish and Boat have launches, we have launches, Western Pennsylvania Conservancy has launches, and we try to make it so that when you're on French Creek, people can do different stretches, but some people can only do 5 miles.
Right.
Some people want a 12-mile kayak, and so we try to keep the gaps between the launches as easy as we can, so that people can really get out there and do whatever they feel like they can do, because I feel like everyone should be able to enjoy French Creek from the creek, because it's a different world to actually go down the creek than it is even
Yeah.
just to stand on the sides.
Wow, it absolutely is. Yeah, I know our favorite section we tend to do from the Venango launch to the downtown Meadville launch. I forget, right, the park.
Bicentennial?
Yes, Bicentennial. Yeah,
Yes.
that's the one that we seem to do. And I forget how long that one is.
Yeah.
That's a good
Yeah,
distance.
so that would be like, from Venango. I have to look at the map, but that's probably around 10-ish or
Yeah, I
more
would think
than 10
so.
miles.
Yeah, when the creek's flowing
So,
though, it's really not that bad on those days where we were like last year when we had those droughts. We did it once. That was a rough day. There was a
yes.
lot of dragging. There was
Yeah.
a lot of walking.
Last year
Yeah.
seemed like it got really low, like lower than I feel like I've
Hmm.
ever remembered it getting.
Yeah.
But yeah, sometimes you're paddling and sometimes you can just float some of it. I feel like I'm a paddler, so I'm always like
Yeah.
wanting to go. But yeah, some days it can be really slow and others you feel like you're just rushing
Yeah.
through. But
We had one. We went down after a storm. Well, it was a couple days after a storm, so the stream had dropped a decent bit, but it was still really high. But we thought we were going to lose our dog Athena. Because she likes to swim, and she jumped off right at one of the islands, and there was a bunch of stuff stuck on the point of the island, and she was headed right into it. And I'm like, she's going to get sucked into those branches, and
mhm.
turned into a whole thing. But it all worked out in the end.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, you definitely need to know kind of what you're looking for sweepers, looking for
Hmm.
things to get snagged up on. But if you look at the USGS website, there are some really good tools where you can find the height gauge of French
Oh,
Creek
really?
at different points. You can find the water temperature, which is especially important in the
Yes.
springtime, because at FCBC we follow the 120 rule. The water temperature and the air temperature should equal 120 degrees or
Okay.
higher. So that's kind of our rule of thumb whenever we're kayaking. But yeah, those are some really nice tools for when you're getting out in the water so you can see the depth because if it's too deep, that can be dangerous, or too
Yes.
shallow, you end up walking a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, those deep days do get a little bit nasty, and there's some really deceptive parts
Oh,
along
for
it
sure.
too, where it's like, oh, I can get out and walk here, and you get out and you're not even close to touching the
Yeah,
bottom.
it can get really deep. So
Yeah,
we definitely encourage people to use those tools.
yeah,
And looking at those websites really do kind of help you prepare and plan for your trip.
yeah, yeah. They can. There's some stretches there where it gets really nasty with some of those rapids, especially on a high flow day. It
Yeah.
can get real rough.
Yeah, French Creek is it's pretty nice because there's not a ton of rapids
Yeah,
comparative to other places like Kagani or somewhere where
right.
it's hard for beginners to get out there and kayak or canoe.
Yeah,
But French Creek's really nice because it is pretty easygoing. There are a few places like in Cochranton, there's a little stretch of rapids, and down at Polly's Rapids by
yeah.
Franklin, there's a spot.
Hmm.
But otherwise, there's not a ton of different obstacles that people have to get through.
Yeah,
Other than like the Sagertown Dam, that's
yeah.
really one
That
of the
one.
only big obstacles that people have to try to get around. But
I broke my kayak on the Sagertown Dam. Yeah, so I used to have this really crappy. Well, it wasn't crappy. It was a nice kayak. It was, but I wasn't using it for its intended purpose. And it was a sit on top, and so the seat was like it was all straps. And I went over to the Sagertown Dam and snapped the seat clean off. And then we were, of course, I think we were going to Bicentennial that day,
oh,
so
so
I
you had a
had to.
stretch.
Yeah, I had that whole rest of that stretch, and I had to go without it. It wasn't our best kayak trip. But,
Yeah.
and then I went out and bought a nice Pelican, and
There
now
you
I
go.
don't have that Pelican
Yeah.
anymore.
No, the dam, that one can be a hurdle
Yeah.
for sure. And you definitely never try to go over the dam because it can skew in,
Yes.
like you probably
Mm,
have experienced.
yeah,
And there's been fatalities
I
there.
believe it.
And so it's definitely more a dangerous situation. But you can passage there to the left.
Yes.
Always go to the left,
Hmm.
where you can get out and you can portage around.
Yeah, yeah. I don't recommend going over it if you don't have
Nope.
experience.
Yeah, yeah. Even people that have experience don't usually go over
Yeah.
dams like that just because it will skew
Yes.
you
And once
in.
you get caught in that, it's a roller, and it's just going to keep churning you back in, and there's not a lot you're going to be able to do.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I know that day it was shallow enough that day that had something happen, we would have been okay. We should have been able to stand up without much of a problem, but still dangerous situation
Yeah,
nonetheless.
water is very strong and
Yes.
people can underestimate it sometimes, but
Yes.
yeah, it can do a whole lot.
It definitely can. So why don't you go ahead and give us a little bit more about yourself, how you grew up and why you enjoy the outdoors?
Yeah, so I grew up in Linesville, PA, so not very far from Meadville, where the Conservancy's based out of. And I actually had staff from the Conservancy, Judy Ocker was on staff as an educator at the time, come into my classroom and do programs for me. And I learned about French Creek, and I went to that French Creek Outdoor Learning Center. And so I was exposed over and over again to the area, and my parents were very much outdoors people, and so we went kayaking and fishing, and my grandpa was a huge muskie fisherman, and so we always went out with him. So I got to spend a lot of time outside growing up, and I knew that I always loved the ecology part. And my aunt was a biology professor at Tri-C over in Cleveland.
Mhm.
And so she was always teaching me these like weird, dirty things about being outside. And I would get so excited about these tiny little things like a weird moth that I had never seen before, or something that I was just like experiencing for the first time and felt like it was new. And every time you went outside, you got to see something different because it's always changing. And so I just always loved being outdoors. And then in school, seeing, oh, you can actually have a career outside.
Mhm.
That's for me. And I knew that I loved learning new things and teaching people about new things. And so I'm like, well, I need to find a job where I can be outside and teach people. And so I started doing Envirothlon in high school, which is learning all things about being outside and ecosystems, um, which is such a nerdy like
No, that's
hobby
awesome.
to have,
That's
is
an
to just
awesome
like
hobby to have.
study and then take this test. But we really enjoyed doing that. Had a great group of friends that did it with me. And so we did things like that. And then as I kind of got more into college, I started working for Creek Connections at Allegheny College. And in middle school and high school, I was in that program. So essentially, what they do is they come to your school, they take you to a creek, you do water quality testing,
Okay.
looking for like pH, temperature, dissolved oxygen. And then you kind of deduce as students how clean is this waterway that
Yeah.
you either have your school next to or frequently visit or is in your community. And so I was really excited going to Allegheny. I knew that this program existed. And their executive director, Wendy Kazurski, kind of knew that I was coming from a school that they had worked with. My teacher at the time in middle school was like, hey, just so you know, this girl's coming up and she would be great to work for you guys. And so they kind of looped me in. I got included into that and I worked there for 4 years during my undergrad at Allegheny. And I was like, oh, yes, this is what I need to do. I need to be outside teaching people about nature. And so then I got involved in the Pennsylvania Association of Environmental Educators, PAEE, and learned that there are so many kinds of positions for environmental education. You can work at a nature center, or you can work for a camp, or you can work for state parks, national parks. You can own your own environmental education programming. And so there's so many different things. And I did not think that I would be working for a land trust.
Right.
But now I work for French Creek Valley Conservancy, which is a land trust. So we have land that we steward and protect in the French Creek watershed. And so now I get to be outside most days and I get to teach people about being outside, do programming, especially with kids. I love working with students at local schools, being able to show them cool things about their backyard and the things that they didn't even know about. And now they're like, hey, how cool is it that we have 27 different species of mussels, or we have these giant salamanders called hellbenders. And so
Crazy.
they are insane. Like, I love hellbenders. You will not find people that love hellbenders more than the people at FCBC. So
I know.
we are fanatics about our hellbenders. But like, who knew that this 2 foot long salamander was just
Right.
down in French Creek? And so I was like, yes, this is it. So I started working for the Conservancy, and now I'm their full time education outreach coordinator, and I get to do that every day.
That's awesome. What'd you go to school for?
So I went to school for environmental science and biology, and I was a dual major, but then I'm like, oh, I'm not busy enough, so let me pick up a minor. So I picked up a minor in education. So I had that too, and it really did all meld together perfectly for the position I have now.
What year did you graduate?
I graduated in 2024.
Oh, okay. So, because Mary Ellen went for environmental science at Allegheny as well. She graduated in 21.
21, yeah. So I started in 2020, the year of COVID.
Yeah.
So you graduated like great around.
She did. Yeah, the spring of COVID is when she
Yeah.
graduated.
Yeah.
So no, that's really cool. Um, so why don't what more can you tell me about the Conservancy, like its history and all that good stuff?
Yeah, so FCVC was founded in 1982, and it actually was not called FCVC, not French Creek Valley Conservancy. It was called the Conneaut Lake French Creek Valley Conservancy. And the whole purpose of this organization when it started was to advocate in response to the use of chemical herbicides in Conneaut Lake. So they wanted to control these aquatic weeds, but the Conservancy was worried that they were using chemicals to do that. So Pontiac Lake is Pennsylvania's largest natural lake, and it's an outlet to French Creek. So they thought that it was really important to advocate on behalf of it. And Pontiac Lake's really cool. It covers 930 acres and it's 75 feet at its deepest spots. So that was just something that's really unique to the area. And so this group of people banded together to protect it. And at that point, like the board was formed. We're a board driven organization. So there's a group of people in our community that come together, form our board, and they help us kind of make decisions and guide the organization. And that continues to today. We have amazing board members that are just doing wonderful work in the community and then also contributing tons to our organization.
Absolutely.
And then we also have just a lot of members that help and volunteer and do those kinds of things. So 2 years after they formed, we became a nonprofit. So we're a 501c3 nonprofit. And then in 1992, the Conneaut Lake French Creek Valley Conservancy focused on advocacy for Conneaut Lake still, but then they kind of switched to become more for the entire watershed. And they set their mission to, quote, maintain the high quality of water in the French Creek watershed. So that was their mission now. They moved kind of beyond Conneaut Lake and wanted to conserve the entire watershed at that point.
We're definitely doing a good job on that
Yeah.
one.
1 year after that, so this would be 1993, they acquired Walker's Landing, which was our first property. So now we have over 3,500 acres
A lot
of
of land.
protected land. So Walker's Landing was our first property, and that was the first one that we acquired for stewardship and land conservation. Then in 2000, we had our first easement. It was the Moss easement. And that was the first landowner partnership with FCVC, where we don't actually own land when we have easements.
Right.
We own the developmental rights.
Right.
So we did not own that property. A landowner wanted to work with us for that.
It's kind of like a lease, right? Like how people lease out a land to hunt on. Like that's very common.
See the
Yeah,
parallels with you.
similar. Obviously,
Yeah.
not quite the same, but very similar.
Yeah. So when we have an easement, it's for forever.
Right.
So we work with that landowner, and then eventually other landowners
Right.
that own that property after.
Yeah.
That initial landowner decided to put those protections on it, but we end up working with the people that own it after them and the people after them, and
Mhm.
we can get as far and far down the road.
Sure.
But yeah, it's nice that we're able to work within the community and include community members in our stewardship and conservation way.
And anybody that's interested in those type of easements should definitely look into it. There are some individuals in Congress right now that are trying to make it to where those perpetual easements are not legal. They're trying to make it to where you're going to have to do an easement with every new landowner, which would be detrimental to the conservation and the stewardship efforts to all of these organizations, not just here, but nationwide.
Yeah.
So that's something we definitely want to keep an eye on at
Yeah.
the congressional level.
So we have a lot of landowners that have made it's a lot to say that you're going to put these protections on your land or to donate land. And so it's a really big decision, and we're grateful that so many people want to open up their properties for us to work and partner with them.
Right.
So we're thankful for that. So, but FCVC, kind of going off of that, we can acquire land through different ways. So, we can buy land. We can have a bargain sale, which is where the landowner gives us that land at a discounted price rather than paying full price for a property. And then we also have land donation, so people can just give us land. And then those conservation easements, where we're essentially getting developmental rights for those properties.
Right.
So,
That's all really awesome.
yeah. Then in 2025 or 2005, we officially dropped the Conneaut Lake and became French Creek Valley Conservancy. So that's when we became FCVC. And in 2014, we became an accredited land trust through the Land Trust Alliance. So
what's the difference there?
So that just means that we have like pretty much people checking on us most of the time. So we go through accreditation every couple years, and they're double checking all of our work and making sure that we're following all the land trust rules. And so it's just pretty much a way to kind of fact check that we're actually doing what a land trust should be doing.
Okay.
And we're doing it all the correct way.
Good.
So that's what our accreditation kind of stands for. It's the stamp of approval that the Land Trust Alliance gives us, saying that we are doing all the things that we should be doing.
Okay, so that's a really good thing to have, and
Yes.
give you guys a lot more credit within the community and everything.
Yeah, it's good to be able to say that we're an accredited land trust. We're not just doing our own thing. We have people that are vouching for us, saying that we're on the right track and we're doing all the good things. So
Awesome.
yeah, but. So that's pretty much the history of the Conservancy. Now we are a pretty small staff. So I'm full-time as the educator in outreach program. And then we also have a stewardship coordinator, and then a land protection specialist who's part-time, and our wonderful executive director, Brenna Costa. So it's a small group, but we do a lot of good work here.
ton of good work. I know we drive by a lot of the properties, so especially the one out on 98. We have friends that live just north of the property there. It's just above the Y. Be on the right on 98 if you're going north. And I think in the last couple of years, it looks like there's been like 300 trees planted in that.
Yeah. So that is one of the things that our stewardship coordinator, Luke Brooks, works on a lot. So he kind of coordinates all of those tree plantings, and we have had hundreds of volunteers come out and help us with our tree plantings. It's really amazing whenever you think about it.
Yeah,
Um, One of the properties that we've recently been working at is a conservation easement. It's called the Wild Conservation Easement. It's actually out in Conneaut Lake. In the past year and a half ish, 2 years, we've planted over 1,600 trees at that
that's
property
amazing.
through hundreds of volunteers.
Right.
So lots of school groups, high school teams coming out, volunteers coming through our organization, FCBC, who are just members of the community. And that's been with help with DCNR Bureau of Forestry in the Crawford County Conservation District. But a lot of really great, like more swamp
Yeah.
adapted species to live out there. It's right off of the Erie Canal, Erie Extension Canal. So it's pretty wet.
Yes.
But yeah, we've planted a lot of trees and shrubs, and that's going to help kind of build up that riparian zone. So all that vegetation that's along the stream or along a lake is known as a riparian zone. And the roots and vegetation itself help to filter out pollutants, to keep sediment in place, decrease erosion, soak up water and store that. And so it just creates a lot of resiliency within the land and creates habitat for critters, great places for hunting,
Yes.
and just like a more aesthetically pleasing atmosphere. So,
Absolutely. Yeah. Do you know what kind of trees they've been planting? You said more adapted
yes.
toward water.
Yeah, so we have another property up at Blackbridge that we just had a planting at for our spring stewardship day. But we've been planting trees there over the past year, and we've planted about 160 trees with 15 volunteers at this past event. And those included swamp white oak, serviceberry, black chokeberry, buttonbush, silver maples, some silky and gray dogwoods, American elm, and sycamore. So those are those like more swamp wet.
Hmm.
They like to have their feet wet kind
Yes.
of trees and shrubs. So those are what we've planted also out at the Wild
Okay.
Conservation Easement.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So
Yeah, that's awesome. We did an event. It would have been last June in Allegheny National Forest with, I don't know if you're familiar with the Meat Eater podcast, Steve Renell and his crew.
heard of it, but I haven't actually listened to it.
It's
Put it on
really
my
cool.
list.
They do all, it's not all just hunting and fishing. They have all kinds of guests on there. There's an awesome group. They do a ton of conservation work too. One of their guys, Mark Kenyon, he has his own podcast called Wired to Hunt. And that's all basically whitetail hunting and conservation. He did a thing where he did the Working for Wildlife tour, is what they called it. And he went across the nation and they had stopped in Tennessee, they were in Maine, New Hampshire, and they just did volunteer events at all these places where they were planting trees, they were cleaning up shrubs, taking down barbed wire fencing. The event we attended in Allegheny, we planted, I forget what it was like over 150 white pines. The
Mhm.
buttonbush, we planted a couple hundred of those. Another group took out, it was like 300 yards, maybe more. I don't remember the number of barbed wire fencing that was old. They took down another couple hundred yards of exclusionary fencing that had done
Mhm.
its job, and those zones were ready to allow the animals back in. And that project, that was a fun time.
Yeah,
We made friends there that I still talk to today.
that's
I just
awesome.
ran into them down at a different event, but that was a lot of fun. So these, we're looking forward to getting involved ourselves.
Yeah.
I know we met at the event in Franklin there with was it the
Yes.
Watersmith Guild?
Yes, so that was part of one of our tap book series. So we do have a lot of different events all throughout the year. And I mean, we have our tap talks. We do those both in the fall and in the spring, and that's where we bring someone who works in conservation or is doing something in conservation to just talk about their work. Ian Smith was talking
Yes.
about the Watersmith Guild and his work with youth, which is really exciting. They're going to come to French Creek this year,
Yeah,
and we're
that's
going to
awesome.
partner with them. So that I'm so excited for that. During the winter, we are like, all right, it's kind of colder, so we host a film series. It's called Our Woods and Waters film series. We do that with the Foundation for Sustainable Forests. Um, and we do a virtual event where we show short films just about conservation topics. Sometimes it takes us to parts of Italy to look at a family of bears. Sometimes we're looking at vernal pools. Sometimes we're doing some like kind of water sport or water adventure. But it takes us kind of into these different worlds that people need to kind of have a little bit of sunshine and a snow coldy day. So we have those. Usually one is in person too. We've done those in Edinburgh recently, the VFW out there. But otherwise, in the spring, we also do a vernal pool walk, which has been really fun. We've worked with the WCRC, the Watershed Conservation Research Center at Allegheny College, and their research scientists have taken us out, and we've been able to do some vernal pool walks with them to see their research. Which, if you don't know what a vernal pool is, it's really just a depression in the ground that fills with water in the spring. Salamanders and frogs lay their eggs there. And then by the time that summer comes around, those critters have become terrestrial, they've moved beyond the water, that kind of dries up, but it's really beneficial because there's no fish, because it does
Right.
dry up. So it's a safe place for these critters to lay their eggs. But we do a walk there and they get to talk about research. We get to maybe see some critters if we're lucky. Um, and then on critters, we also do a bird walk, which is coming up here in May. And we're doing that out at one of our conservation easements. And the landowners are ornithologists, so they're
Okay.
going to really give us a great bird walk, talk about research that they've done on their property, but they've protected that property with a conservation easement,
That's gonna be awesome.
which is really great. They're the best. So they'll be out there kind of showing us what they've done with that land and how they've adapted it to have different kind of environments in different parts of the property to host different species of birds, which is really cool.
No, that's awesome.
So,
Yeah, and there's this new movement in the conservation world, and especially in the hunting world, where if you go back 10 years or before that, especially like if you take whitetail management, it was all, well, we're going to manage specifically for whitetail habitat,
mhm.
specifically for this one species. And what the hunters have come to realize, and it seems to be a sweeping trend in the conservation world, is if we manage for everything, it works out so much better anyways. I mean, you can't technically manage for everything, but if you set your property up like you said they did, where this area is a real high stem count. This area over here is going to be a lower stem count, maybe a little bit more open. You know, the squirrels will like that. The deer and turkey will like the high stem count stuff. And you can break your property up like that. And your property, although it's sectioned off in a way, is really meant for everything in the area. And it just seems to work out so much better that way.
Yeah,
Get
yeah.
that biodiversity up and everything is happy.
We work at a habitat, what we call habitat scale conservation. It's essentially that you're not just protecting a species of mussels or a species of fish or a species of birds. You're working at the habitat level and you're creating forest connectivity, you're creating migration corridors. So you're building up to have an entire habitat preserved and stewarded and protected rather than just focusing on one thing,
Right.
which essentially is what I hope most people are doing now too.
Yes.
So,
Yeah, it's definitely, that's from what I'm seeing, that seems to be the direction that everybody's moving in, and it does seem to have a very positive impact this way, much more so than it was the other way. Not that the old management techniques were necessarily bad, I just think that we've improved on them over time, which is what we want to do, because in 10 years, I'm sure that we're going to have better techniques than we have today, and that's the end goal, is just constantly get better at this. That way,
yeah.
everything can continue to improve, and we can continue to build that better habitat over time.
Yeah, and with conservation, like you said, it's always changing, and especially with
Yes.
climate change, we're going to have
Yes.
even more changes. And so, being able to be resilient and adapt is going to be very important for conservation and so many other sectors that we really are going to have to make that a priority and be flexible and work at that habitat scale to keep everything happy. So
yeah, especially that the climate change and those temperature changes in water. I mean, that's huge
yes,
when that water temperature changes drastically and stays high and doesn't
yeah,
come back down. And I mean, that's stressful on all of the species. So I know you said you listened to the first podcast with Mark, and he had mentioned with the musky fishing, I'm sure you've noticed this, and when those temperatures get warmer, the fish just turn off, and it's because it's not good for them. And
yeah,
they like those cold waters. I guess Conneaut Lake fishing would be a little bit different. That water doesn't really warm up too much, but
yeah,
yeah. Um, but it definitely has an impact on all of those species, and they're not just the animals, but the vegetation and
hmm
the all of that stuff.
yeah. There's a lot of species that are not going to like the
Yeah,
changes that happen to this area. So just having a resilient ecosystem where things that are going to do well, we've kind of helped along, or especially like putting in those strong riparian buffer zones are going to be important.
yeah,
Creating the water, creating those cool waters, it's helping to
absolutely.
build that resiliency, which is
Yeah.
what we want to see.
And as that water temperature rises, the aquatic insects are going to come up because they really like that warm water. So if our fish populations or our crayfish populations start to drop off, those aquatic insects are going to do havoc on that aquatic vegetation and whatnot. So
Yeah.
it's really important to keep all that stuff in check.
And there's a lot of important species, like trout species, like
Hmm.
cool water, our hellbenders, like that
Yes,
cool, fast moving water. So we want to make sure that we're doing, because like you can see just from our conversation, everything is connected. And if you want to protect one thing, might as well just protect it all.
exactly.
So
And I think it just works out better that way too.
yeah.
And you have a healthier ecosystem, you have a healthier habitat, the species themselves are healthier. You don't have, if you just focus on that one species, it'll get out of check and then it's going to
Mhm.
damage something else. And I mean, eventually it'll balance itself back out. But if we just take that approach from the beginning, we don't ever have that negative repercussion.
Yeah.
You know, like I know for a while there, the deer population was insane, and the browse
Mhm.
that they were doing. I mean, we didn't have any new tree growth in certain areas for 15 years because the deer would just mow them down because they didn't have anything else. Especially, you know, when we had those harsh winters and whatnot. So
Yeah.
definitely important to keep all that stuff balanced so that we can keep everything moving forward together instead
Yeah.
of breaking it up like that. But speaking of deer and hunting,
Mhm.
your guys' property, a lot of it is open to the public for hunting.
Yes, so we have on our website, if you go to www.frenchcreekconservancy.org, you can find our property list, and under that property list it has all of the public properties, directions to them, maps, and it also designates whether or not hunting is allowed.
Right.
Um, and so it's a really easy kind of process to get registered to hunt on our properties. You can visit our website. We have a hunter registration form that you fill out, and it's pretty quickly you'll get your approval, but you can specify where you'll be hunting on that form. And then you will be able to go out and hunt those properties. And let me tell you, seen some pretty big deer come out of there, some
Oh, I
pretty big
believe it.
bucks. So
Yeah,
yeah, so we are excited to get people out at their properties and enjoy what we have to offer to
absolutely.
the community. So
On there, does it give any type of regulations on like tree stand usage or anything like that?
yeah, so we do have some rules that go along with
Hmm.
that. It's not necessarily my forte to know
Fair
all
enough.
those.
Yeah.
I will say that, but Luke Brooks is our stewardship coordinator, and he runs that forum and deals with all of that kind of thing, hunting related. So he has a whole slew of how he has all that laid out and
Gotcha.
what your regulations are for. But yes, yeah, we do have all those kinds of rules, and they're shared with you whenever you fill out the
Oh, okay,
registration
that's
form.
perfect. So it's
So,
all right there. Awesome. Is there anything else that you'd like to talk about or let us know about?
so otherwise, we do have a lot of other events coming
Mhm.
up. So we're a land trust, so we conserve land, but we also like to give back to the community and include the community in our efforts. So I talked about some of our springtime things and our winter things. During summer, we always have a summer sojourn, which is a really nice paddle that we do. This year, we are already sold out. We sold out in like 2 weeks, which was awesome because
Yeah.
that means that people are excited to get on French Creek. But we have that every summer. This year we're going from Cambridge Springs to Sagertown. So that nice section that you
Yes.
said that you like to do, we're gonna do that. And then every fall we have our French Creek cleanup, which is where we invite people to go and sign up on our website. You pick a location. You can either do it yourself or you can get a team. And then you go on that day. This year it's September 6th. On Saturday, you go, you clean up, you collect all this trash, and then we have a meeting point. This year it is at the Cambridge Springs Fairgrounds.
Okay.
We all meet there, weigh our trash. Last year we had over 32,000 pounds of trash and a couple hundred tires. So, like, it's a lot of
Yeah.
trash, but it's not us cleaning it up, it's our volunteers. So, hundreds of people help us during this event collect all this trash. We have a Hellbender trophy that corporate groups can kind of fight for,
Yeah.
but they bring in their trash and see who has the most. So we have this giant Hellbender trophy, and we have a picnic, hot dogs, hamburgers, and people just kind of mingle and talk about the most unusual things they collected. We have a most unusual table. Would you get some crazy things at
I'm
the most
sure.
unusual
Yeah, I
table?
can only imagine.
And we have a photo contest, but it's really, really fun. And it's just great to see everyone come together. And like you said, our community really cares about
They
French
do.
Creek. And so this is an amazing event to just see how much people really care about French Creek. Otherwise, in the fall, we have two walks. We have a walk in Penn's Woods and a Movember walk. We don't try to do those at conservation easements because they're not open to the public. We have very generous landowners that invite us out to their properties and kind of show us what their favorite parts of that property is. We've had some really cool places that we've gone to. And they're kind of exclusive because you don't ever really get to go there. But those are always really fun too. So we have lots of events, and you can find those on our Facebook page. You can also find those on our Instagram, on our website itself. And we currently are a member organization. So if you donate to our organization, you become a member. We also have newsletters that go out. We usually have 4 of those a year. They're called The Current.
Nice.
So I hope you like that fun.
Yeah, I love
Um,
it. I'm
but
always for a good pun.
yes, so we have the current that goes out, and it kind of highlights some of the work that we've been doing, and our coming events. It recaps events that we've had recently, and then just kind of just shares good work that other people in the watershed are doing, other organizations are doing. We like to highlight that as well.
Oh,
And
that's
then
awesome.
we have some other like little series in there, like we have a Creekside Critter series that one of our landowners writes. She highlights a different critter every current, so there's always something new in there.
That's really cool.
But
I do want to ask, did you guys get involved at all with the car recovery? This was at the last year or the year before?
no, we did not. But we always like kind of like to see how those things
Mm-hmm.
kind of work out. But we were not involved with that.
Okay. I remember the first time we saw it was I missed it in the news where it had happened, and we
Mm-hmm.
were kayaking. I'm like, oh, it looks like a car. And Marion was like, there's no car in the middle of the creek, and I'm like, we get closer, like, that's a car. And I think it was in there for a couple of months before they were able to get it out. 'Cause I
Yeah.
know right when it happened, there was real high current and
Yeah.
everything.
Was that at the Sagertown one?
Yes.
Yes,
Yep.
I remember that when that happened.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's crazy. But we were not involved with
Okay.
that, no.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't have the ability to like remove trash
Right.
ourselves. And we would never be able to remove all of it
Right. No,
ourselves.
I understand that.
But
Yeah.
yeah, but we have had some like really big things come in for the cleanup.
Yeah.
Snowmobiles, like
Really.
there's been some large
Hmm.
pieces of trash come in, which are fun to like pose on and then throw in a
Yeah.
dumpster.
Yes. Oh, that's pretty cool. All right. Well, that's all awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, guys. Thanks for listening. Hopefully, you enjoyed that conversation as much as I did. That French Creek Valley Conservancy is an absolutely amazing organization. Please check out their website. Please check them out on social media. Go volunteer at one of their events. Help them fundraise. Become a donor. Do anything you can to help them out. The French Creek is one of the cleanest waterways in the world, and they are working day in and day out to keep it that way. It is an absolute treasure for the community, as the signs say all over. the place, and I know we enjoy it ourselves. Mariellen and I are constantly kayaking on it. We have the dogs down there. We've fished in it. We've done the whole 9 yards, and we love it. Let's keep it good. Let's help this organization out that's protecting it. Um, it's a good thing. Hopefully, I can get some of her colleagues on. They have a stewardship director over there. I believe we mentioned it in the podcast. I'd like to get him on, talk to him about what they're doing with some of the properties that they own, how they're maintaining that habitat, building it up, and all that fun stuff. I think that'll be a great conversation I can have here in the future. But until next time, remember, take someone outside.